This used to be a hell of a good country. I can't understand what's going wrong with it.
Man, everybody got chicken, that's what happened. Hey, we can't even get into, like, a second-rate hotel. I mean, a second-rate motel, you dig? They think we're gonna cut their throat or something, man. Like, they're scared, man.
Oh, they're not scared of you. They're scared of what you represent to them.
Hey, man. All we represent to them, man, is somebody who needs a haircut.
Oh, no. What you represent to them is freedom.
What the hell's wrong with freedom, man? That's what it's all about.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's what it's all about, all right. But talking about it and being it, that's two different things. I mean, it's real hard to be free when you are bought and sold in the marketplace. Of course, don't ever tell anybody that they're not free, because then they're going to get real busy killing and maiming to prove to you that they are. Oh, yeah, they're going to talk to you and talk to you and talk to you about individual freedom. But they see a free individual, it's going to scare them.
No, well, don't make them running scared.
No, it makes them dangerous.
You know, this is political. I think it's the politic thing to do for these people. They want to either keep their position, they want to keep their funding, they want to stay on the right side of the tracks, and so they go along with the cover-up.
Can you talk about your frustration, or do you ever think about giving up the fight for 9/11?
Well, that's a good question, because no, I haven't. I've never thought about giving up, and you know, I can tell you that it's been very difficult. It's been very difficult at times, but you know, it would be worse to give up, especially, you know, knowing what I know, and having done the research that I've done over a period of years. It would be just stupid to give up, but more than that, it's like to give up and to give the to let the lie go on for even one more day. It would be a sin. It's wrong. Yeah. You know, and this whole thing is so wrong. The way these people have hijacked our reality. The first chapter of this book, The War on Terror, it's like living with here it is, coping with artificial reality. Because in the 16 years since 9/11, that's where this country's been. The United States has been in this artificial reality. You know, we've been given a lie about what happened on 9/11, and based on that lie, we've gone to war. We're waged war against, you know, half a dozen Islamic nations. We've done terrible devastation to places like Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan, and we've done great damage to this country. You know, the cost of the war on terror is at least $2.5 trillion right now. That's not counting future costs down the road, which will double that. I mean, this is suicidal. And, you know, I love this country, and I want to see this country restore some of its integrity and get back on track. It's like the country's been hijacked. There's no better way to say it. The country's been hijacked, and you know, when the country's been hijacked, you can't just sit back in your first-class seat drinking champagne and not worry where the plane's going. You got to turn it around. And that's what I think, that's my obligation, and that's the obligation of people in the country who understand 9/11 truth.
Good evening. Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shatter steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve. America was targeted for attack because we're the brightest beacon for freedom and opportunity in the world.
Do you feel that this huge sacrifice that you've made has been for a cause that has been worthwhile?
I can't answer that question right now.
When people look back on this time and look back on this conflict, I honestly believe they will see this as one of the defining moments of our century. And you did it. It was your courage and your professionalism that did it.
Lots of people in a small area will panic me because it sends me back to being outside that compound, being surrounded by people who were bigger than me.
Do you know what this is? Congressional Medal of Honor. Let's see what the inscription says. To George M. Cohan for his contribution to the American spirit. Over there, and grand old flag, presented by Act of Congress. I congratulate you, Mr. Cohan. I understand you're the first person of your profession to receive this honor. You should be very proud.
I am proud. In fact, I'm flabbergasted. First time in my life, I'm speechless. Sure there isn't some mistake.
Quite sure.
But this medal is for people who've given their lives to their country or done something big. I'm just a song and dance man. Everybody knows that.
A man may give his life to his country in many different ways, Mr. Cohan. And quite often, he isn't the best judge of how much he has given. Your songs were a symbol of the American spirit. Over there was just as powerful a weapon as any cannon, as any battleship we had in the First World War. Today, we're all soldiers. We're all on the front. We need more songs to express America. I know you and your comrades will give them to us.
We have accomplished something that generations upon generations of Jews died for. And Israel is not obstinate and intransigent. The Jewish people has been. If not, we would have been long forgotten. It would have been somewhere in history we would read or study that there was such a thing as a Jewish people.
Jews from more than 100 countries, from all the lands of the Jewish dispersion. After World War II, survivors of the Holocaust. In the first years of the state, from Iraq, Morocco, and the Arab countries of the Middle East, and more recently, from the Soviet Union.
I am coming to my family, to my land, and to my people.
An ember of Jewish longing still smolders after a half-century of communism. Families reunited in Israel. The struggle of Soviet Jewry to escape to freedom continues. Here in Petah Tikva, Golda meets with a group of Russian immigrants newly arrived in Israel.
Well, don't make them running scared.
No, it makes them dangerous.
But then the world erupted into war. During World War I, which resulted in the fall of the Ottoman Empire, a secret agreement took place called the Sykes-Picot Treaty. And this treaty was whipped up in 1916. It drew out the new borders of the Middle East, dividing the region into states, and under that treaty, Palestine was placed under international control. Post-World War I, the British assumed control over Palestine, and only 1 year after the Sykes-Picot Treaty was signed came the Balfour Declaration. Nestled in a letter between the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour and addressed to Walter Rothschild, the declaration promised Palestine as a home for the Jewish people. Keep in mind, this was the Rothschild banking family who were among those actively funding both sides of the First World War. And the same practice was applied to World War II because countries who were at war needed money in order to arm their soldiers and keep them fed, among other things. But monetary profit was just icing on the cake for Rothschild Zionism. In order to fully execute their Zionist state, a hub that would serve as a means of control over the Middle East, they needed Jewish people to have motivation to reside there, and global superpowers to support it. Leading up to this time, Zionists were actively buying up land in Palestine and settling there, where Palestinian Jews, Christians, and Muslims already resided. And yes, it's true, Palestinians did attempt revolt before the State of Israel was officially established in 1948, which Zionists cited as being motivated by anti-Semitism. But if you take a step back and objectively look at what was taking place, Palestine was their home, and it was obvious to the Arabs that it was being invaded, taken from them. So now that we've covered the history of Zionism up to the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, let's talk about the results of a Jewish ethno-state. Following the creation of the State of Israel, 700,000 Palestinian civilians were expelled and fled from their homes, in what some might refer to as an ethnic cleansing of sorts, which seems pretty anti-Semitic to me, since by definition a Semite is anyone who speaks a Semitic language. Since 1948, Israel has implemented a regime of settler colonialism, apartheid, and occupation over the Palestinian people, with war being a daily reality. In 1967, the Six-Day War between neighboring Arab states and Israel took place, with Israel coming out ahead, capturing and occupying the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and, of course, the Syrian Golan Heights. Despite the UN calling for Israel's withdrawal, they've held on to these lands, which has really caused some problems, not just for Israel and the neighboring regions, but for everyone. The Zionist defense of their treatment of Palestinians is that Israel was isolated and abandoned by everybody after World War II. They had to fend for themselves and were surrounded by hostile states. They claimed that their actions were out of self-defense. After all, Jewish Zionists see themselves as God's chosen people. And this territory, in their view, was given to them by God, and it was their destiny to take it. A part of this Zionist manifest destiny was perpetual war in the Middle East. It's very reminiscent of how American colonists violently stole more and more land from Native Americans over time, resulting in Native American genocide. But Israel's expansion into the Greater Israel through wars of conquest, as well as their human rights violations, go unpunished by the United Nations. Though in 1975, the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 3379 determined that Zionism was a form of racism and racial discrimination. However, this determination was revoked in 1991. But still, it seems like while Israel is a Jewish state, it's only for a certain type of Jewish people. And the Palestinian Jews that were there already, or the Ethiopian Jews, for example, that were transported there throughout the 80s and the 90s, well, they seem less than desired there. And what's ironic about all of this is that there is debate about the origin of these European Jews who started the Zionist movement, as a number of them have ancestry that has been traced back to, well, not the original 12 tribes of Israel, but back to the Khazarian Empire where they converted to Judaism, taking on the Jewish identity. And there is speculation that these are the fake Jews the Book of Revelation warned about. To summarize, Israel has and continues to commit human rights violations against Palestinian civilians, as documented by the UN and human rights organizations. These are repeated examples, daily tragedies that the global superpowers have turned a blind eye to. Presumably in the United States, it's because the Zionist lobby has a great deal of power, and any criticism of Israel and its practices is silenced by accusations of anti-Semitism. The violence continues.
Before I was even born, my father was in the Congress of the United States, Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. He was okay, let's hear it for Dad. He was, as a little teenager, a Shabbat Goy. So he spoke Yiddish. He spoke Yiddish. So as he grew up in that, and he was an orator, he was a great speaker and all the rest, and he had a love for the idea of a Jewish state in what was then called Palestine. So when he was older and he went to Congress, this was one of his big issues. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. He was a New Deal Democrat. He worshipped at the shrine of Franklin Roosevelt. But he disagreed with him on two very strong points. One was on the treatment of Jewish people in Europe that he wanted to call more attention to. And two, okay? The second was the establishment of a Jewish state in what was then known as Palestine.
Shabbos Goy, the lights aren't working here in the main shul or where our children play. You should have known that Jews cannot set timers. Now we can talk, but sadly we can't pray.
On Friday night, an Eruv wire is missing, and sundown came over an hour ago. The rabbi watches as you do the fixing. You drive away as our rabbi walks home alone. During the week, you can tend our garden and empty buckets from the Shabbos rain. Oh, Shabbos Goy, we must beg your pardon, but it would help if you would learn to lay.
The day will come when you say you're leaving. You'll take a job for much better pay. And on that day we will all be grieving. Oh, why can't we get a Shabbos Goy to stay?
I do? Well, I don't hear anything.